Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from OurSportsDaily.com. I am Greg Flamong. Jamie is still finishing up his post-game or post-practice report. He's going to be with us in just a second, but I wanted to get the show started because I know a lot of people are excited. The chat is going off, and so I wanted to get some of the intros and things out of the way. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If this is your first time catching us, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is. We are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, this show is brought to you by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang and ESQ Clothing. You've seen ESQ and all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2024. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Notre Dame opened fall camp today. Everyone is very excited about that. Got to see the team in its entirety for the first time. Bo Collins, wide receiver out of Clemson, who transferred to Notre Dame. He made some big plays today. Talked about him yesterday with Tyler Wojak. I thought he was going to be a key player for Notre Dame, kind of create some buzz in his first fall camp with Notre Dame. He made some plays today. So we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of other topics, some news and notes to start the day. The first thing that Marcus Freeman pointed out at his press conference, Kahanu Kia, just back from his Mormon mission, torn ACL over the summer. He is going to miss 2024, which is a bummer for him because he had looked really good in the spring. It's somewhat of a surprise because he had been away from the sport, but not really a surprise because his freshman year, his first semester at Notre Dame, he had looked really good on special teams and in some, kind of practice type settings. So he has torn his ACL. He's going to be out for the year. Bummer for him. That's very, very bad. He was someone that you kind of thought could bring something to the pass rush specifically, although he was playing linebacker, but coming off the edge, he was going to be a factor. So he is going to miss the 2024 season. That is the bad news. The good news is that Ben Morrison, Mitchell Evans, and Kevin Ballman are back. They are on a limited basis, but Marcus Freeman said they are trending to they're trending to be back and cleared fully for the opener against Texas A&M, which I think we had all kind of assumed, but you wanted to hear the confirmation on that, right? Especially with regard to Ben Morrison and Mitchell Evans. Ben Morrison might be he's probably the best player on the Notre Dame team, and he's a key to what they want to do on defense, right? Like defensively, they want to play a ton of man coverage, and he is a big part of just erasing the other team's top player. And he's someone who's been able to do that against the likes of like Marvin Harrison Jr. Obviously, he's not completely, taking him out of the game, but like he's someone that you can put in man coverage. He's not going to get beat over the top. He's not going to give up a ton of big plays. So he's a very key player for them. So he's going to be back. Mitchell Evans is going to be back. He was out there running around with a knee brace on. And then Kevin Ballman provides that depth, on the back end with the tight ends, although that's a very talented room as well with Eli Raridan and James Flanagan. Riley Leonard running with the ones and Jelly with the twos. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a huge kind of announcement there as far as, Marcus Freeman is going to come out and announce Riley Leonard as the starting quarterback. He's taken all of the reps with the ones. And so if he's taking all the reps with the ones, he's going to be the starting quarterback. That is just what to take away from that. Not unexpected, but it's something that's nice to see in that they obviously are confident. Marcus Freeman said that Riley Leonard was basically 100% throughout the summer. And I think something to kind of pick up here too is they do a lot of team things over the summer as far as, working on plays, working through plays, building chemistry, doing a lot of teamwork, both offensively and defensively. Obviously there isn't the full structure of what you would get with a practice like they had today, but they are doing a lot of things. They are working on a lot of things. Riley Leonard is 100% throughout the summer. That's a big deal. Matt had reported, if you're a member of ISD already and you were on the message board over the weekend, Matt did a kind of a summer check-in. He reported that Emil Wagner was taking all of the first team reps at right tackle throughout summer workouts, and he did so again today. So that is kind of the big newsy item that Marcus Freeman confirmed today that Matt reported on over the weekend. And I think that, it was trending in that direction over the spring. He was able to kind of build on that in summer, did a lot of good workout things with Lauren Landau, build up his body, build up his strength. And now he's ready to go as the starting right tackle for Notre Dame. At least that's projected to be the case. I think that's a very big deal. Jordan Faison working out of the field position as a wide receiver is another kind of wrinkle. And I think that, Matt, if you had a chance to go over and look at his practice notes, first team wide receivers on the boundary, Jaden Thomas goes out as a boundary wide receiver ahead of Bo Collins. It's not something I personally have a problem with. That's totally fine. It's going to be interesting to track where Notre Dame is as far as the reps go, especially at that position, right? I think that Bo Collins brings a just kind of an athletic element to the wide receiving core that just hasn't been there. It certainly wasn't there last year, especially out of the boundary. They weren't able to get they weren't able to get vertical out of the boundary positions. All of the kind of damage that they did last year, especially in a lot of the big games, came out of the slot. So they need to get the field involved. They need to get the boundary involved. That's something you need to see. But I love to see Jaden Thomas getting that first team reps. He had Matt reported in his practice report, a lot of one-on-one success against Ben Morrison that Jaden Thomas had. So look, if you're getting open and you're catching passes against Ben Morrison, you can do that against anyone. That's really good to see. Bo Collins cooked, I think it was Chance Tucker in a one-on-one situation. So he was able to get vertical on him. Bo Collins needs to be able to beat a player of that caliber. So that's very nice. So good job by Bo Collins on that front. And then some last news and notes. Emil Wagner running with the ones. So let's get some of the comments while we wait for Jamie here. First of all, I want to shout out Ken Trainham with the thank you for the super chat. OLG, let's go. He was fired up. So that's very good to hear. Let's check in on some of the other comments to see some things that you guys checked out. Michael Parks did not like the intro music. You know what's funny about that is I was actually looking to change that before the show, and I couldn't find a good one, but I do want to change it. It's not that I don't like it. It's just like I'm just kind of tired of it. K says, did we ever find out who isn't on the team anymore? I thought they were at 86 scholarships. I think Notre Dame is good. I think they're at 85. I don't know specifically, but it was brought up on the board, I want to say last week, and Notre Dame is sitting at 85 scholarships. They are under what it's supposed to be. So I think they're going to be fine. It isn't a big problem. Let's see. CFB Hertz. Someone had brought up, didn't hear anything about Buckner. Matt reported on Tyler Buckner. Tyler Buckner was working the receivers, caught the ball well, but obviously there's a ways to go there. He's just not going to be a factor. Like he's just he's not the part of the reason for that is he hasn't been a wide receiver. B, they just have a lot of options. Like it's Deion Colsey is a guy who isn't getting reps. Deion Colsey, who has played significant minutes for Notre Dame, has made big plays in big games for Notre Dame, catching touchdowns against USC in the Coliseum, right? Like he has done things in meaningful action, and he's not getting reps right now, or not meaningful reps right now. And that's where Notre Dame is at with their receiving room. So someone like Tyler Buckner, it's just not like there's a ton of availability. Like I was watching the video clips that Matt put up, and I was thinking to myself, like, man, Cam Williams, like good looking player, like in previous, like maybe 2 years ago, he's someone that Notre Dame would be counting on to be a big time player for them, right? And And he's just not like, he's not a factor, and that's okay because they have guys like Jaden Harrison, they have guys like KK Smith, they have guys like Jordan Faison and Chris Mitchell and Jaden Greathouse and Jaden Thomas and Bo Collins, right? Like they have all these options at wide receiver that it's just the Cam Williams of the world. Micah Gilbert, he was getting reps with ones and twos. It sounds like he is a step above than Logan Saldate, who's going through his first full practice today. Cam Williams, it sounds like he was a scout team guy. Micah Gilbert's with the ones and twos, so he's the one who is going to be getting kind of those reps. And when he's the only one there, that kind of goes to show like where Notre Dame's receiver depth is. It's going to be a very interesting season on that front. Steve Miller, thank you for the super chat. Happy football season. All looking forward to another season with you guys. Appreciate it, Steven. Very much appreciate the super chat. That was a that's very well received, and we appreciate that very, very much. Sam K, it's a good point. Matt saying Schuler looking good is big. He has to really hit for next year, especially. This is a great point, and when Jamie pops in here, I'm going to reevaluate my top 25. Not so much because I think that Rod Hurd is like they had a bad practice or whatever it was. It's just that it seems like a Don Schuler is closer to Rod Hurd than I previously thought. And if he's taking 1 reps, and it's a true, like if Notre Dame truly has like 3 top line safeties there, then that makes a big difference for what they want to do, because they really like to have that third safety on the field in their sub packages. And so I'd have to drop Rod Hurd a little bit in my top 25, not necessarily because of him, but because of a Don Schuler. Like a Don Schuler needs to come up. Like I think Bo Collins needs to come up a little bit in my top 25. So I would have to make some changes there. I'm curious to see what Jamie says about that, because I just wasn't sure where to put those wideouts. And Jamie and I talked about that a bunch. I might have to bump up Bo Collins a little bit. You got to consider Jaden Thomas. So that's going to be interesting to monitor as camp, kind of continues there. Kenny Moore says, didn't have to spend that much time on Buckner. I was just curious. No problem. It was actually a good spot to talk about the receivers at large, because watching the highlights that Matt put out there, it just was apparent, like, man, they really have a lot of bodies. Like just them going through the drills. Like, usually the first couple guys that go through the drill, it's like, okay, those are their players. And then you get to some numbers that are like, oh, those are walk-ons. Notre Dame isn't having that happen right now. You see them, going through the drills. You see them going through multiple players where it's like, oh, that's Logan Saldate, that's Cam Williams, and like, they're 5 or 6 deep at that point. So it was a good opportunity to talk about that. And right now it's a good opportunity to bring in Mr. University, Jamie Uyama, hitting and hustling throughout the day, going to practice, going to the press conference, typing up the practice report, and here he is. Jamie, how are you feeling? Are you rested? Are you fresh for today's show today?
I mean, I don't say I'm rested, but I'm saying I'm fresh. I'm ready to go. I mean, it was a hot one. It was very hot.
Yeah.
Most humid day in South Bend of the year. So,
well, that Marcus Freeman mentioned he wanted to put him out there in the heat because of where they're going to play in the opener against Texas A&M. So, unfortunate for you, but probably a good thing for the team.
Yeah, and I think it's a good in general to get used to it. Obviously, it's going to probably even be even hotter that day. Yeah. So, I think it's just one of those things that Marcus Freeman brought it up too. You have to manage it, and it's something that you have to learn, like how to manage it to get ready the next day. That's something you learn during camp for especially a lot of these freshmen, maybe who haven't had to deal with this kind of pace before. But I would say that you have to be able to get in a situation where you're ready to go and deal with it throughout a game. And this is like, there's no better practice than actually doing it.
Yeah. So they setting the team up really well. Quick, just like first thing I want to hear from you about. You walk out of the facility. You listen, you watch practice, you listen to Marcus Freeman speak. You walk out of the facility. What are you kind of saying to yourself? What is the first thing you say to Matt, like as you're walking out? What is it like? Oh, man, that offensive line or that player or whatever it might be. Like, what was kind of your first mention as you left the facility today?
It's a great question. I mean, definitely can't focus too much on the lines today when there's no pads, that's
Right.
for sure. Although there was, certainly things that caught my eye. I think, for me and Matt, we both mentioned Bo Collins looked good.
Yeah.
He looked good. Like, physically, he looked good. He made a couple of nice plays. I mean, it's just one day, and I mean, this is like our first introduction to him, so this is the
Right.
first impression. I mean, I wouldn't say he had a dominant practice at all, but he's someone that, especially on day one, you're looking to see. Like, I mean, let's see what he looks like, because obviously he was a guy that was a very highly recruited guy, someone who's super highly rated. He's a multi-year starter at Clemson. And they've had talent. I mean, they haven't, and his problem had more to do, I think, with the offense and the quarterback play there. So you want to kind of see, what he can do. And I thought physically he looked great. I think him, and I would say Jaden Thomas. I think Jaden Thomas looked great today too.
Yeah.
Which isn't surprising, because it's not like he hasn't come out during camp before and looked good during camp. But I thought this was the best Jaden Thomas looked in terms of high pointing the football. I thought that looked noticeably better to me. And I thought, when he was like matched up with like Ben Morrison before, that was like, you're almost always taking an L there,
Yeah.
right? And I would say that, he did pretty well today. Like, he made a couple plays against him. One was, would have been an incomplete pass because it was like out of bounds, but he made the catch. It was a great catch, kind of like a turn his body, great body control play. And then another one too, where he leapt up and grabbed it, and it was impressive.
I mean, like I noticed, I mentioned it before you joined the show here. Like, if I was reading Matt's report, and if you're making plays against Morrison, you can do it against anyone, right? Yeah. And I think Jay Patterson makes a note in the chat that he doesn't know about Collins' fears. He's a practice player, and it doesn't translate to the game. Like, I don't have that fear, because if that's the case, then they'll just play someone else. Like, I think that's where kind of Notre Dame is. Like, if Bo Collins is not making it happen in games, whereas last year you just had to, like, you had to force feed Tobias. Where this year, if it's not happening, then they'll just put Jaden Thomas in the game, and then they'll go that way. So I think that's kind of where Notre Dame is with their kind of wide receiver situation.
I would say, sorry to
No,
interrupt you, but I would say, even if you look at it where they're at now, where, I mean, they were really hurting on the boundary for so long, right? And I don't know. I mean, to just having like, oh, hey, he looked good today, that doesn't mean anything for the season. I mean, we don't,
for sure.
I don't know, but one, he has made plays during games. He has made big plays. It's just his level of consistency and whether or not he's going to be a guy. He'll be a contributor. It's just, can he be like a no doubt, like, oh, he's the boundary, he's this number one guy, we're going to be able to go to him? That's the question, and that will only get answered on Saturdays. And it's the same thing with Thomas, really. But I think you're right in talking about how, like, well, yeah, then they have Thomas there, and then I mean, Micah Gilbert again too, and I know he wasn't going against Morrison or whatever, so it's not the same thing. But he just continues to make plays when he gets a chance. Like Micah Gilbert's a good player. Like he's going to be a very good player for Notre Dame, and yeah, he continues to impress. I think he's kind of as advertised of what you would hope for like this guy's the boundary receiver of the future. Like that's, I mean, he keeps checking the boxes.
Yeah, noted in Matt's report that starting left guard, or I don't want to say starting. I'm going to make that mistake throughout. The person who went out with the first team at left guard initially was Pat Coogan. And then the second team came in was Sullivan Absher. Rocco Spindler working on the right behind Strouth, which if you're working on the right behind Strouth, then you're a backup, in my opinion.
Well, you saw though that he worked later in, right?
I did not.
Oh, yeah. So this was the thing. I mean, so if just kind of like for clarity's sake too, because there was like an early kind of like, team session and then later on a team session, and there was Skelly and there was different things. So they kind of mixed and match with the starters at certain positions where everything that you think is a competitive position, they basically switched it up later on. So Rocco was the starter at left guard to close practice.
Got you. Okay.
And then Coogan worked the right side on the second team. So that's how they did it with that. Similar to at safety where Schuler came out with the ones with Watts to start. And then Hurd was with Talach in the second team earlier. And then Hurd came out with Watts later on. And Mickey came out first with the corners, it was Mickey and Morrison. And then it was Gray and Morrison in the later part of the thing. And that's kind of how, and then, you couldn't even tell who was at linebacker because there's literally 5 different guys they worked in with the ones. Yeah. So they are really giving all those guys a shot there, which I think is good. Like it's good to kind of, let it sort out. And I think ultimately too, it'll come down to like, who kind of makes the most plays and who's, doing everything that they need to there. But that was those positions. Interesting though, that because it wasn't like at right tackle, they didn't go, okay, Tosh, you're now at the right tackle there. Like that didn't happen, right? So Emil Wagner was with right tackle the whole way. But left guard, it's not to say that Emil Wagner, if everything's locked down there, we'll see what happens. But clearly during the summer, there's a gap there between him and Baker where it's still obviously neck and neck for Spindler and Coogan.
Yeah. And people in the chat are commenting on Coogan, not so much maybe them, but just I think the fan sentiment is, and you get this anytime there is a player who is lower rated and you have a higher rated player who he's starting over.
Yeah.
And so anytime, and I think I'll just give you my position on Coogan and then you can kind of comment too, is you've noted the struggles that he had in certain situations last year. The same as Spindler as well. So
yeah. Absolutely. Both of them.
Yeah.
It's not,
yeah. So both, it wasn't singled out on anyone. And my thing on Coogan is I don't personally have a rooting interest. I don't care. To me, it's like the standard is the standard and you have to play the way you have to play. And if he's in the game and he starts, I'm not like, it doesn't bother me that he's running with the first team in any way. It's just that like, and this is true for Emil Wagner as well. Like whether I want it to be Emil Wagner or whether I want it to be Rocco Spindler or Pat Coogan or whoever, like the standard is standard and you have to play the way that they need them to play. And that's what I'm looking for. Whether I want it to be like, I think that people get it in their mind, like they want it to be a certain guy. It doesn't matter at this point. Yeah. You have to play the way that the offensive line needs to play to excel in the situation. I don't know that Pat Coogan can't, right? It's not like we've seen 3 years of him. That's not the case, right? He had 1 season. So yeah. I just think that I think people need to have an open mind about him. If he's out there, he's out there. And then we'll evaluate what we see from there. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. And also I would say that the way that I would say from just last season, is Coogan's good, I think, was better than Rocco's good.
Okay.
Not significantly better, but it was better. But his worse was worse. So that's that's obviously tough to balance, right? Like you don't want to have those kind of struggles. And kind of going back to the ranking part of it too. Like I was looking at, I was just interested because I didn't know if there was going to be anything on it, but Dane Brugler, who does the NFL draft stuff for The Athletic, does a great job. He, had his interior offensive line rankings, and for his underclassmen rankings, Pat Coogan was listed at guard. I think he was like the 5th underclassman guard or something like that.
That's interesting.
I mean, that doesn't mean anything really, like in terms of like where he'd be drafted or whatever. But I'm just saying he's listed there.
Mentioned him. Just that he's popped to him. Yeah,
he's there, and Rocco wasn't listed. So, I mean, take it for what it's worth. But that's just so it's just like one of those things. Like Blake Fisher was ranked ahead of Joe Alt, but I mean, Joe Alt was better than Blake Fisher. And I think everyone kind of understood that later on, right? Like, it's just, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. There's always been guys at safety. There's been guys at safety who were ranked higher than Xavier Watts, right? And certainly corners that were ranked higher than Julian Love. You just got to, once you get at Notre Dame, and rankings do matter. You want to sign more 4 and 5 stars, yes. But once you get on the field, it doesn't matter that if Troy Pride had a higher ranking than wherever, or Dante Vaughn, because Dante Vaughn and Troy Pride were higher ranked than Julian Love, and Julian Love was obviously a better player than both.
Yeah. I think Frank Horrigan's making a good point here. We already know how the O-line will be. First 3-4 weeks looks rough, and eventually get it together. It's an every year occurrence. I think that's especially true when there's youth like this and inexperience. Like, that is just the nature of, no, I don't want to say the position, just the unit, right? Like, we didn't see that from the 2017 line, the 2020 line, like these lines that had just a ton of starts, not just total, but like together and playing like next to each other. And like, so I think it's important. And I don't know that Frank was saying it like this, but struggling and having struggles or whatever it might be, that doesn't mean losses, Like, I think that people are very afraid of, look, Texas A&M's a good defense, right? You've pointed this out a bunch. I don't think there was a worse matchup. You've compared this line to the 2018 line. I think you did it on Power Hour this week.
Yeah.
There was not a worse matchup than that Michigan defensive front and Notre Dame's offensive line that year. And Notre Dame ended up winning the game, right? Like, you do have to find a way to win games other ways when your offensive line isn't dominant. But I do think, to Frank's point, like, I do think that they will continue to grow and get better as the season goes on, right? So, anyway, I just think, like, it's a good, kind of, let's be practical about this, right? They're not going to be Joe Moore Award winners in week 1.
Yeah. I think what you brought up in terms of, like, it is the youth and it's having veterans and whatever. It's like, if you bring everybody, like the 2020 O-line, I mean, they didn't have the greatest first game, but they certainly didn't struggle in the first game.
Yeah.
And then they were like great from then on out. Right. And also you got to remember, they couldn't even hit during that 2020 camp. It was like obviously it was weird. The pandemic made it weird camp. So, it's not an every year occurrence that they're bad for 3. I mean, the line wasn't bad in the first, beginning of this past year. They weren't. That wasn't what it was. It just turned out that the game where they maybe had some struggles against NC State, those were the same struggles they had all year, because it was those guys, it was those guards, right, who struggled the most. So, and we're not going to know about the guards until much later in camp. Like they might decide on it, but we won't kind of know how good, all that group is. But I mean, I will say it too. Like I should mention, Anthony Knapp was the second team left tackle, which was also of note to me. So they moved him to the left side there to be, which he played in high school too. So it's not like completely foreign to him. And that's Absher was there too. So those guys are young, and I do wonder with Absher, because I think they really, really like Absher, like in his future.
Yes.
If Absher isn't, they want him to be on the left side so that maybe at some point he takes that over.
Yeah.
So that's something to also think about. I mean, I don't want to discount Coogan and Rocco, like that they won't get together and it'll be their job and do a great job. But why else would they just keep him on that left side? It just kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah. What I don't want to get too in the weeds on this because it may not be indicative at all, but it's interesting they have Knapp on the left. Because Jagusaw, they're both young, right? Like if they think Jagusaw is a hit, then Knapp's got to be on the other side, right? Like it just doesn't.
Well, they got Kirby Lambert at right tackle on the other
true.
thing. So
yeah.
So it's, I mean, I do think that they're, I mean, and they're gonna have Will Blacks coming in and Augustine, like they're gonna be
to recruit well in the offensive line, Jamie.
They're gonna be deep at tackle. I think they're gonna be in a good spot at tackle. So I think what is probably gonna happen is some of those tackles are gonna kick inside because that's just kind of how it is. And really, like I know everybody wants Quentin Nelson as a guard. But really, if you don't have Quentin Nelson, it's pretty good to have a guy who can also play tackle, who can play guard too, because, most of the time those guys are better athletes.
Yes, versatility is important. And you want that in your offensive line and with your media company, Jamie. And if you want versatility with your media company that can help you do a multitude of things, and you want to go to VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame Football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at bsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Right before we move on, Emil Wagner, tell me, what your impressions were like, and let's throw out caveat. Obviously, no pads, so a lot to be figured out on him, right? Or found out. But that being said, tell us what you thought of Emil Wagner. I mean, it's pretty big deal. Starting right tackle looks like it's going to be for Notre Dame.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he had a good summer. I mean, I thought he had a good spring too. So it wasn't like crazy there. I just thought he looked good today. Just, run game wise, it's a wash. You can't just tell anything there. I just thought one of the things with him, for me watching him, is that he gave up a short corner too often. And I thought he's long, but he didn't play long. Like he didn't use his length. He wasn't like keeping pass rushers at bay, or he'd flash hands too soon and get him knocked away. And where I thought today, just in the stuff that I watched, where he was way more, he just looked more confident and in control. And there was just a one-on-one rep with RJ Oben where he just did just a great job, where he just had him like Oben, I would say probably the previous one was probably closer to a draw. I mean, tough to say. We were kind of far away from where it was to see if it was like a clean win, but The next one, it was like a clear win for Wagner, where he just did such a great job with just keeping Oben away from his chest and just really like just keeping him totally out of that side and stoning him. And it's just not something that I've seen a lot from Wagner in terms of just him using his link that well. And I thought he did that for the most part in team as well in the pass rush part of it. So I thought he looked good. And I think it's always a great sign too if you come out and, I think one of the things too that people, it's not just about ranking or whatever that they want him to win the job. It's like, well, because if he wins the job and does well, that means he's going to be a starter there for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what, maybe 3 years, right? So, of course you want someone there that you can have there. And he definitely, I think too, has a very high ceiling that he could end up becoming a top pick one day too. So, I think it's really encouraging that, he's where he's at right now, at that position.
What, I guess we haven't talked about Ge Wang either. I mean, I think he kind of gets forgotten because, he's I don't want to say he's known, but like his position isn't up for grabs. So it's like he gets kind of, but like he didn't have a great spring game as we kind of talked about,
or the Jersey scrimmage the week before.
Yeah. So how did you think he looked today?
I thought he looked good. I mean, definitely, like I would say, because that was the thing that stood out in both of those situations, is that he was getting beat clean a lot. And it's okay. I mean, guess what? You're going to lose.
Yeah.
It's, you're the other guy's on scholarship too, right? Like,
for sure,
these guys are good, but you don't want to lose clean very often at all. Like, I mean, how many times can you say that Joe Alt ever lost clean, right? Like, count them on one hand, maybe, right? Like, it just doesn't happen very often. And so that's the thing too, is that you want to present as much of a problem as possible. And I think it was just like way too easy for those situations. And then just today, like, I just thought, because I will say, like, Jordan Botelho looks really good. He looks really good, like very slimmed down, twitchier, way more like the guy he was in 2022.
Yeah.
And he had a really, really nice rep where he kind of stoned him in one-on-ones. Botelho beat him once or twice in team, but he also, held his own pretty decent in team there too with Jagsaw. And I would say, and then, Traore, who gave him all kinds of problems in the spring.
Yeah.
He stoned Traore too, like, and did a good job. So, I think it was like a good day, a good start for him. Encouraging. Obviously there's going to be more tests to come, but thought he had a good day.
Sam K with a good question here. What is the thing about Absher? Is it because he's asking, is the thing about Absher his athleticism at his size? Hear a lot about athleticism of the young old lines, but not sure who that applies to all the time. So what is the appeal of Sullivan Absher? Like, why do you feel like they are so high on him beyond, like, if he does the things that they ask, that's obviously going to be a good thing. But like, what is it about him specifically that you think has them excited?
Well, he's a monster. He's big. Like, he is huge. Like, he has just long arms, a huge frame. And he's just big, strong, and he's country strong, right? Like, he's just one of those guys, right? So I think it's that, I don't think he's certainly not a bad athlete, but I would say, like, his athleticism stands out amongst everything. But I just think he's a guy who could be a potential mauler in there. And, there's certainly stuff that we saw from just like, the blue gold game too, where he's, moving people. They want, like Marcus Freeman said in the press conference after, right? Like, we want to establish the line of scrimmage. We want to move the line of scrimmage. We want to be able to do that. And Absher has already shown, like, he can move people. So I think that's one of the main reasons why they're really excited. And I think too, like, I think we're at tackle. It is harder, and you're going against better athletes there, and you're, so when he was at tackle, I think, you're playing with a lot more space, and there's a lot more you got to react to, and where strength and being able to anchor and all these kind of things are more important at guard, and I think he's kind of further ahead there, so that's why they like him at guard.
Yeah, like I think that one of the main things that I've kind of taken away from just on almost, I don't want to sound accident, but just like kind of like listening to you and like reading the reports and everything is like the line going forward. But like this year it's up in the air, but for the next 2 or 3 years, it might be like they might be in a really good place with their offensive line. A lot of good options, a lot of guys that they're excited about. I mean, we haven't even talked about like Gerby Lambert, really, right? Like, and we don't know how he looked. So it's just kind of, they're in a really good place with their line. Like you said, they got Will Black coming in, another guy who everyone's very excited about. So a lot of good things on the offensive line for Notre Dame. Just quickly on the quarterbacks, it didn't seem like anyone really stood out. Matt kind of pointed out like Riley Leonard's a big guy, very big guy, and he made some big time throws today. Not that everything was, as crisp as you would maybe want it to be or it could be or whatever. But anything kind of stand out to you? I know you're always kind of focusing on both lines, but anything there just kind of you want to touch on with the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I thought the quarterbacks looked like it was day one for them. Like, I thought they look, because this is what is very typical of even like veteran guys, is that it's one thing to be like, hey, we're doing like 7 on, just during the spring or during the summer, and you're just kind of throwing against, maybe against the defense, but you're not getting a rush. And they kind of did like this weird modified Skelly today that I don't know if Matt mentioned it.
I was reading about it, and I'm having trouble picturing it. I get the concept. So explain it for people who don't know what we're talking about.
So Skelly is skeleton, which is basically 7 on 7, right? And it's usually against, there's no rush, right? Maybe you have one guy stepping up as a blitzer, but he's not even really getting in your face. Like, the quarterback doesn't have to deal with anything. The quarterback is just there, and he's just sitting there and reading, and they're counting seconds, right? It's not reflective of what's actually going on in a game. Well, they did this kind of like modified Skelly where they would have basically 3 O linemen and 2 pass rushers, and those guys would rush. And I think it was just more, and they didn't use like scout team guys. They used starters. They worked in starting D linemen and starting O linemen, and they worked those guys in mostly from the interior, because it's just like pushing the pocket, and you have to deal with that. And I actually kind of liked it. I actually thought it was great, because it was like, this is way more real and way more of the stuff they're going to have to deal with, especially like when you're playing, you're going to play a team with a good pass rush in week 1. You don't need to be like, man, we look great against air. Like, no, like, for sure. Just deal with that, because that's what you're going to have to deal with all the time. Right. So I thought that was actually pretty good. I think one of the things with the quarterbacks, accuracy, first read accuracy, pretty good, I think, for the most part. Second read, getting off the first read, not great from either of the guys. Especially kind of shocking for Angeli, because who's usually like pretty on point.
Yeah.
But I will say, both guys, after they made like a bad throw, next throw was almost always great. So that was, stood out for sure. But like, so, okay, for instance, though, like Chris Mitchell, he's not going to appear a lot in people's practice reports. He didn't really do much in this practice. Well, Leonard missed him for a wide open touchdown. on this one play where he was, I can't remember the corner that was on him. My apologies for that, but like he had a lot of separation. It was wide open, and he obviously cooked the guy, and he just missed him, like way overthrew it. And there was stuff too with like Angeli on checkdowns, like he almost got a pick six. Schuler almost had a pick six on one. He like threw another one up, which was another one for Mitchell, which I feel bad about. He had to like jump up and grab it. And then Mickey like made this comment like, what kind of throw was that? Or something like that. It was, yeah, it was pretty funny. But it was not a good throw. And then it would have gotten them like some free access yards. Instead, it got them nothing. Right. Like, so, I wouldn't say either of those guys were on point today. It was pretty clear that, Leonard's with the ones and Angelia's with the twos. And Minchie and Carr didn't get any reps with the ones or twos today. I think, Freeman said they have a plan for how they want to work those guys in. So that's going to be interesting. Also going to be interesting too, because I think if like Angeli, if he has these kind of days, it might be, he might lose that backup job. Like, obviously it's day one. It's not worth overreacting for too much, but and he did make some really, really great throws. Like he made a couple really great throws down the sidelines on some fades and stuff. And Leonard too had some really nice like back shoulder throws that he made. I think those guys actually looked their best, looked way better throwing out wide than they did over the middle in this. But a lot of that was because, I mean, Notre Dame's defense, they're freaking good, man. They're good, guys. This just in for everyone who didn't know, Notre Dame's defense, they're really good. The linebackers and the safeties, especially, these guys are just on it. They're on their P's and Q's. They're on it already. Like, it's not like it wasn't day one for them. Like they were really all over stuff. So, and to me too, I just love seeing that too. Cause guys were like, okay, I can't remember too. There's somebody else who's got thrown a slant and Sneed was just going to just destroy. And he was like, boo, like he was going to destroy this guy if it was in pads.
Yeah.
And it was like all those kind of things is like, those were the kind of completions they could get over the middle there. Because other than the deep stuff, there just wasn't a lot available during it. I mean, we should also mention too that Mitchell Evans didn't really do much in that part of practice, and he's more of a tougher matchup than the other guys right at the moment. Yeah. Although Flanagan had a couple nice catches.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Freeman mentioned like they're at 500 level courses right now, right? And I think the difficult part for, I mentioned this yesterday with Tyler about, specifically about Riley Leonard. I didn't think this would be a problem as much for Steve Angeli just because he practiced with all these guys in the spring. But it's just because Notre Dame has a bunch of guys who have position flexibility, is when you're moving receivers around, it's one thing you want to build chemistry with a wide receiver, but you also want to build chemistry with a wide receiver at that position.
Yeah.
And so if Jaden Thomas is moving around, if Jordan Faison's moving around, if Jaden Greathouse is moving around, if a number of guys are just kind of like in different positions, it's just going to take a little bit for him to get used to all of that. Again, he didn't practice in the spring, and you're going against a defense that, look, they've got, no one has gotten over on this defense. They went up against USC and the type of offense that they have and shut them down. Like, if you're going to do that, you're going to look good against your offense in the first day of fall camp. They know what they're doing, right? And if like the only people who weren't really like first time like main starters in that secondary are like, Rod Hurd, who has like 2,000 snaps or whatever it is for Northwestern, and Jaden Mickey and Christian Gray, who also played last year. Like they're just like, they're going to look good, right? Like they're going to do a good job. It's going to be very difficult. I think the fact that Adon Schuler is looking as good as he is, you know, getting 1 reps next to Rod Hurd. I mean, one thing I wanted to ask you is, like, we did our top 25 preseason, just kind of like snapshot, like who on that list either didn't make it that you're starting to think maybe that person's going to go in at the end of camp when we do this, or like who needs to drop down a little bit. And I think Rod Hurd might have to drop down a little bit just because Adon Schuler is going to take some of those reps, it sounds like. So who for you?
I mean, good, yeah.
Who for you were you thinking like, I need to consider this player a little bit more than I did, or maybe I need to drop someone?
I mean, Botello maybe, right? Because, you know, we had mentioned before, right? Like that could be a guy that I think right now so much depends on like if Botello looks like the kind of pass rusher that he showed before, and then all of a sudden, like he's back on 3rd down, and you're like, well, we got to get this guy on 3rd down. Like he needs to rush the passer on 3rd down. Well, that, you know, that obviously changes things for him, right? Like that, you know, his ceiling goes up then. So he's certainly someone I would say defensive line wise. I mean, you could say any of the linebackers could go up because it just depends on if they decide like this is where we're going to go. But I'd say Adon definitely, you know, has to be up there because I don't think it's like a crazy thing to say that he's going to play like a lot this year. And he looked good. He looked good today. And I mean, he looked good in the spring too, right? And the thing is he's only going to get better. So it's
right.
Yeah. I mean, he easily could. I mean, I would say, you know, offensive line wise too, right? We got to wait and see with these guys, but certainly a lot of those guys like a Wagner, right? A Wagner, an Ashton Craig, you know, Jagusaw too, right? Because we're kind of like, we don't know with all that. So that's something. And I guess it depends too on like with, you know, a Bo Collins and whether or not like, you know, where he's at. I don't really think too many others unless like, you know, as we go along, certainly not based on today. Like you can't tell anything of the backs today, right? It was just not one of those days when it's very hard to get a read on them. But I mean, who knows? By the end of camp, maybe we're like, Aeneas Williams or Keedron Young or something like that. It could be something like that, but I don't know. I would say too, like if you're looking at it, so you know, I mentioned when we were talking when I first jumped on for the people that weren't here on at that time that, you know, we're talking about how they kind of split with like left guard and they were splitting with the safeties and certainly like linebackers, they were kind of moving around. So I think it's like all these things they're doing because it's not like they have bad options.
Right.
They have like good options there. So I think that's kind of encouraging and also could point to some of those guys and it being a lot more valuable.
Yeah. Just get to a couple comments. Blayberg asking about Luke Talich. What was his what did you notice from him? He didn't pop up in a lot of the reports, but I mean, when you have Adon Schuler, you know, popping and Rod Hurd and Xavier Watts, like it might be difficult for him. What did you see from Luke Talich?
He had a really nice PBU on one play. You know, so that's something he seems to always kind of be around the football and you know, be a playmaker on the football. So good ball production whenever he's in there. To me, Luke Talich looks like, I mean, I don't know how much he's going to play this year, but Luke Talich looks like a guy who's going to play for Notre Dame. Like he's going to play. He's going to be a factor at some point for Notre Dame. And that's kind of like the best way I can put it. Is just that whenever you see him, you know, again today, that that's how I would put it. I do want to mention because sorry, I don't know this guy's name, Dion Yarmeto or whatever, talking about Hurd at nickel. Hurd got a very small scraps at nickel at the end, but it is clear Jordan Clark is the nickel.
Yeah.
Like, he took all the reps.
Yeah.
Like, Hurd is the guy who will probably go in next, but I don't think, and to me, I just watching Hurd when he was at nickel, he doesn't look as good at nickel as he does when he's at safety. He just doesn't to me. Like, I just and I think if you watch him at Northwestern, first of all, they play they're like a super, super heavy zone team.
Yeah.
And that is not Notre Dame's defense. And I think he played nickel because they didn't have anybody else. Like, so it's like one of those kind of things too. So I don't think, I mean, Hurd, it doesn't matter. Notre Dame plays 3 safeties. So people don't have to worry about like these guys playing, because also remember on third down, they're going to play 3 safeties.
Yeah.
So I don't think people have to worry about those guys getting enough reps, because if anything, you might just see it be more of a split between those guys than it's say where DJ Brown got, quite a bit more than Ramon Henderson by the end of the year. And I don't think that, it would probably be more of an even split. It would be my guess if they kind of go that way. But you got to wait to kind of see. I will mention too that Rod Hurd, it's always nice when you see these guys that come in that transfer somewhere. He's a 6-year guy, obviously. Mm-hmm. He just looks like he's been at Notre Dame. Like, you're like, oh yeah, he's returning starter or something. Like, he just looks like that because, he's calling out checks. He's, when they're doing the tackle circuit, it's not like, and it's not to say, I mean, obviously he knows how to tackle. He's been in college football, whatever. But
for sure,
I'm just saying sometimes, he might have done a completely different tackle circuit at that he's done at Notre Dame. So the drill might be just a little bit different. Well, he's the kind of guy where like Max Bull's like, hey, great job, Rod. Like after the thing, like he's a good football player. He just knows, he's smart. He's fundamentally sound. He's just one of those guys you want to have on your team.
And like, it could have been like an Antonio Carter situation where he comes in and it's just like, ooh, I don't know if he's going to help, and like, it's not that. So that's good. Justin, ND Troll Sniper asking, did they talk about defense? Jalen Sneed, what comments?
Well, I mean, he obviously worked in with the ones, and was, when they did the first set of ones at linebacker, it was him and Kaiser. So that doesn't mean anything that he's going to be the starter or anything like that, but it was Kaiser at Mike and Sneed at Will was the very first group they went with. And obviously they mixed and matched throughout the day. And, he also played a little bit of rover too. When they did it, they did very little rover on the day. I want to say like probably 8 plays total the whole day of having 3 linebackers on the field. So it's not like they were doing a lot of it, but I don't know. I mean, linebacker, you're not going to be able. It's like if you read what I wrote in the practice report, you can't say much about the linebackers because other than it's like, yeah, they did their job in coverage. They were all over things and this and that, but it's like inside run game, you're not doing any of it. And that's always going to be the thing. I think with the big thing with Sneed is that because athletically, he can obviously play anywhere, and he's going to be a guy who helps out on third down and do all this kind of stuff too. But can he play, will linebacker in the base defense, and can he trigger and like have the instincts of the recognition where he is going to play fast? And Marcus Freeman talked about the guys who play early at freshman are the guys, they process things fast.
Yeah.
And they play fast, right? And that's the thing is that Sneed, to me, the biggest difference between him last year and this year is he plays faster. it's not like he would always react. And I mean, he was chasing the ball and all that kind of stuff too. But he was like out of control because he was like late to react to stuff. And now it's like, no, he sees it more. He's recognizing more. So that's why he's playing faster, which is why, I mean, he's getting an opportunity with them once. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. I just feel like with the linebackers, I don't think we're ever really going to get clarity on them. And that's like fine. I don't think it's a problem because, like you said, there's so many good options that they have that they can mix and match and bring in different guys. I think it's great that Snead is really starting to pick it up, starting to trigger faster. It's all starting to make sense for him because obviously the upside for him is so it's very high, right? He has very high upside. And I think we've talked about this a ton where it's just like they have so many things in their bag that they can go to in different situations with the types of athletes that they have, with the three safeties that they have. I guess one thing that is where I'm kind of flagging / monitoring is corner depth. It's probably in there. Like Marcus Freeman talked about Carson Hobbs and Leonard Moore. Like he needs those guys. Like one of them needs to kind of be ready to go. I'm kind of curious to your thoughts on this. I think because Ben Morrison is so good and we are so kind of just high on Christian Gray and Jaden Mickey's played a bunch. It's like you look at those guys, they're going to be okay. But corner depth may be just kind of something that's a little red flaggy monitoring throughout kind of camp and as the season goes forward. Like kind of where are you at with that situation?
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely probably the main thing to monitor.
Yeah.
On defense, because I mean, Chance Tucker's with the twos today. He had a really rough day. He had a rough day. He had a rough day. And I mean, frankly, he's never really looked like he's going to play. He's maybe shown some flashes here and there, but it's never been a thing where you're like, man, Chance Tucker, it's going to happen right now. And like this would have been the golden opportunity. And I don't know, it's just one day. So it's just, maybe he comes back the next day and it's great. But I definitely think that, Hobbs or Moore need to really, it would help them a lot if one of those guys can play this year. I think that both look good in their just brief one-on-one stuff, but they just didn't get the reps. So we'll see. I wasn't at the first practice in 2022. So I wasn't there at that time. And then I arrived later in camp.
Right.
But no one on that first day was like, Ben Morrison. Wow. Not one person. Go back and read. There wasn't a single person on that first day who said, man, Ben Morrison, get ready. He's going to play. But I was there on the day they had a full practice. And I was like, Ben Morrison jumped these other guys and he's with the twos. And I'm like, Ben Morrison looks damn good. Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Ben Morrison just stuck Logan Diggs in the face. Then Logan Diggs threw a football at him after, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just like things there that you're like, he made plays on the ball. He was just really just above what you would see from a normal freshman. Like he processed faster. It was just clear. So where it was like, oh, he's going to play this year. Like, I mean, I didn't have him beating out Clarence Lewis by the time that they got to like week 2 or 3 or whenever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly was like, oh, this guy's going to play this year and be a good player for Notre Dame. So maybe in, week and a half, 2 weeks, we're like, dang, Leonard Moore. That's it. Right. So that's what it's going to be. And the thing is too, is that you get these reps and the more you play and the more you kind of gain confidence with it. Because I would say too, like that's something too, when I'm just like watching, like say Botello today, he just looked more confident.
Yeah.
Like he just looked more confident out there. And I think people don't take that into account, but it is such a big thing of performing in sports in general. It's just like, you got to be out there confident in knowing everything that you know, where before there's so much with Botello where you're just like, man, this guy's playing like a bat out of hell, but he was like, oh man, he didn't pick up the back on the peel, or he didn't do this, or he didn't do that. And now you just don't worry about that kind of stuff anymore with him. But that's just all the stuff that you worry about with freshmen. So it's like, okay, well, like, let's see how it is. I don't know. I think Lattimore had a really nice one-on-one rep with Micah Gilbert where he stayed in phase, and like it was an incompletion, ball was off, but he was like right there. And it was where, I mean, Gilbert really kind of cooked Tucker a couple times today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to watch. Obviously, Hobbs, they've been working at nickel. And I only saw him one rep on a slot fade. He did a nice job. It was another ball that was off, but he did a nice job on it. I don't know. I mean, it sure sounds like they want to get him ready. So
yeah, I mean, he definitely made a point to say that. I mean, look, if they're playing Hobbs in the slot, like they must like him a little bit. You don't put corners in the slot position if you don't feel like they have the aptitude for that kind of position. So we're going to be monitoring that throughout the fall camp. That's going to be something that we're going to track. And you're going to want to be hanging and monitoring Irish Sports Daily, our YouTube page, the website. A ton of information is going up. I got to go read Jamie's report. Being on this show, I haven't been able to read that, so I'm going to check that out. You should go check that out as well. And you're going to want to hit the like button on this video. You're going to want to subscribe to our channel, and you're going to want to hit the notification bell soon, whatever it is we're going live. It is that time of year when we can pop up a show at kind of at any point because of just the way things move and the way news moves. And this, if something topical comes up, you come up and you check, and we, pop on a show and we talk about it. So you're going to want to subscribe to everything. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please hit that like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is we're going live. We'll be back to talk very soon about the Notre Dame football team. I'm going to collab with Jamie on that and see what his schedule is. So have a good day, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.